Hello everybody, you listening to J Movie Talk, episode 345, and I am back continuing on with summer blockbuster month. Hopefully you have been enjoying what I've been doing so far. Of course, last week's episode where I talked about Jurassic Park, had a lot of fun talking about that, and I feel like we're going to have some fun here also talking about this week's episode, which of course I'm talking about 1996 Independence Day. This movie is actually one of the movies that I actually saw opening weekend. I will never forget that. 1996. I was 10 years old when this movie came out, and I saw it the opening weekend that it released, and that was a blast. Going back and thinking about that, and when I saw it at the movie theater, and like I say, as a kid and everything, certain movies just kind of stick with you and leave a lasting impression as far as an experience, especially if it's one that you saw at the movie theater when it initially released. And Independence Day is one of those type of movies. The fact that this movie made it cool, and it's kind of, I think, the first really, and made it cool to blow up the freaking White House in a movie, that's when you kind of knew, yeah, shit getting real. Oh, whatever. The White House getting blowed up. It's getting crazy out here in these streets, right? But that was always like something that you didn't see. At least I can't think of a movie before Independence Day that did it. But I do know after Independence Day, you started to kind of see that in certain movies where the White House get blowed up. I would say 2012 is one of those movies. I mean, the whole entire earth gets freaking destroyed, but they do put emphasis on the fact that the White House gets destroyed, even though the president, played by Danny Glover, dies in that movie. But there have been other movies where the White House has been destroyed. White House down, Olympus has fallen, things like that, where the White House get destroyed and different things of that nature. But I do believe that Independence Day is the first movie. Now, if anyone who's listening, if you know of a movie where the White House gets blowed up or destroyed before Independence Day, definitely let me know and everything like that, because I'm curious, because like I say, off the top of my head, I can't really think of another movie that came before Independence Day that did this. Not after, but before it. And everything. And of course, I mean, this movie has a lot of classic, iconic moments. Of course, Will Smith, character of Captain Stephen Hiller, where he, knocks out the freaking alien, and, that's what I call a close encounter. Or Randy Quaid running around in that damn crop duster and just being a complete madman for most of the movie. And then it kind of becomes the hero at the end. And everything. And then, of course, Bill Pullman and his presidential speech, getting everybody hyped up to go, basically go up on these fighter jets and try to, save the world, basically. But like I say, this movie is riddled with like classic scenes and quotes and, and everything like that. And so let's get into talking about how, kind of going back to the summer of 1996. I mean, this is Will Smith at a point in time where he begins his summer blockbuster run, and why he became known as Mr. Summer Blockbuster. And the fact that this movie does have an all-star cast and everything, because not only do you have Will Smith, who is, he's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is just winding down basically and everything, but he's already done Bad Boys the year before this, and here he is, in Independence Day. And then you have, of course, Jeff Goldblum, who I talked about in the last episode of Jurassic Park. Here he is, doing what Jeff Goldblum does. You have Bill Pullman, you have Judd Hirsch, Vivica Fox. Let's see, who else is here? Randy Quaid, of course, as I mentioned earlier. But also this movie is riddled with a lot of, well-known character actors. I mean, Brett Spiner shows up, who's best known as Data from Star Trek. the next generation. He's here. Harvey Fierstein is here. James Rebhorn, who anytime that dude showed up in the movie in the 90s, you knew he was up to no damn good, whether it was in Carlito's Way, Sin of a Woman, this, The Game. I mean, he pretty much just was always playing like the no good ass character in a movie. Like, you see his face, you just know he was up to no damn good. Robert Loja's here. Mayor McDonald. Like I say, just an all-star cast of people who show up, throughout this movie. Harry Connick Jr. is also in it on everything. And he does his freaking Reverend Jesse Jackson impersonation, which is always ridiculous, but I mean, it's funny too at the same time. And of course, this movie is directed by Roland Emmerich, who is probably best known for these type of disaster-ish type movies. He did write this movie as well as directed. And some of the other movies that he directed just for purposes. I mean, he directed Universal Soldier, Stargate, which is the movie he directed a few years before Independence Day. He did Godzilla, The Day After Tomorrow, another, world coming to an end type situation. 2012, another world coming to the end, and also a movie that I actually reviewed a while back on the podcast. So I think I need to do The Day After Tomorrow, and I will have completed the Roland Emmerich The World Is Coming to an End trilogy, unofficial trilogy, of course that is. He did White House Down, which I actually mentioned, which I think Roland Emmerich has a thing with blowing up the White House, actually. And then also, unfortunately, there is the not remake, but sequel of Independence Day Resurgence, which we do not talk about, and that is probably the only mention and reference that we will say about it on this podcast and everything. But for the most part, Roland Emmerich is known for these, disaster type of movies and everything. That's pretty much where he made his name with these type of movies or whatever. And I mean, you either like them or you don't. But I would say this one thing that I do enjoy about Independence Day is that on the surface, it is a B movie. It's a B movie with an A-list cast and an A-list budget. For the most part, because this is the type of movie that you would have got like back in the 50s and the 60s. Of course, the special effects would look hokey as hell, but for 50s and 60s time, it would have been off the charts, right? It would have been like, oh my God, what is this? Type of thing. But it's basically the thing of where you would get like, a well-known cast and you put them into this, crazy situation. And you just kind of go along for the ride and you see who survives and who doesn't survive, basically. And that's what you got here. And I think it was very smart with how they marketed the movie and everything, because it gives you that kind of like, oh my God. And then the fact that you set it on Independence Day. So in a sense, it is a holiday movie. And it also released on, I believe it was July 3rd of 1996, which, again, it's right there, holiday weekend of July 4th weekend, to be exact. So seeing it on that weekend and the way they kind of constructed the whole marketing behind it, it was really genius if you really think about it, and everything. And then also too, like I say, the fact that not only is it a summer blockbuster movie, it's an alien invasion movie. It's a monster movie, basically. And it kind of help usher in, kind of bring back, I should say, the whole alien invasion type movies, because you started getting a string of these movies. Hell, I mean, Mars Attacks, even though I always say that Mars Attacks in a way is like the comedic version of Independence Day and everything. But I feel like this movie kind of helped, bring back, like the alien and the invasion type movies, which again has always been a B movie type of a trope type thing. But here is put on a very grand scale. And Roland Emmerich, he has, this style where his disaster stuff in the movies is very much a spectacle. I mean, the whole thing surround when the aliens in this movie, when they finally, when that timer finally hits zero and Jeff Goldblum character, he's like, time's up. And then when they start blowing the hell out of New York, they blow the hell out of DC, in particular the White House, the state Capitol building, and everything. And they kind of just going around and they just showing all the different set pieces as it's getting destroyed and people just, basically getting incinerated by the flames and everything. Like I say, it is a beautiful disaster spectacle and you just witnessing it. And then, like I say, the whole thing with Vivica Fox and her son and the dog, in the tunnel and everything. And as they're trying to, escape being burned, alive, and they escaped into like the little closet or whatever and everything. And then of course they make it very cinematic with the dog, as he's trying to he's like open it and the dog, he jumps through the door right before the flame, comes flying past and everything. And like I said, it's very much a spectacle when you watch it. And the movie, it has a lot of emotion to it. I mean, the whole thing with Will Smith character, he loses his whole entire, platoon as they get wiped out by the aliens, and everything. And then for a chunk of the movie, he thinks that, Vivica Fox character, who he's, engaged to, well, he wants to get engaged to and marry. He thinks that she's dead because the city that they're from has been completely, destroyed and everything. And he's like, well, I hope she got out and everything. But there's like a chunk of the movie where he don't know if she's alive or dead. So, he's dealing with that. She don't know if he's alive or dead. And then how she becomes like a savior to a lot of people, and everything. And then also too, you have the whole thing with the president where he doesn't know if his wife is alive or dead, and everything, because she was in one place and he of course was at the White House before they were evacuated, and everything. And like I say, once everything went to hell literally and everything, everybody kind of started getting scattered. And like, there are certain people who don't know if they're alive or dead, and and then there are people who get killed and everything. And you just, I like how they put a lot of human emotion to it, and you do feel for a lot of people in the movie, in different ways. Of course, some of it is kind of played up for comic relief, because like the whole stuff with Randy Quaid and his kids, to a degree, is kind of played up for comic relief, which I'm going to talk about some of that stuff later when I bring up certain things. Because even though I enjoy Independence Day, but there's like a few things in the movie that always kind of I won't say annoy, but kind of bothers me. Of like, why did y'all decide to make like these choices as for playing it up as like a tongue-in-cheek ha type of thing. And then I go back to like how with all the big name stars in this movie, Will Smith, he this, even though he did Bad Boys the year before, he's known as the Fresh Prince on TV. He was a rapper before all of this and everything, but it really feels like Independence Day is his true breakout of where it's like, no, Will Smith is a movie star, and that's where his run truly kicks off because of Independence Day. I mean, Bad Boys is Bad Boys. It's a great movie. It's a fun movie. But Independence Day feels like it puts him in a different, stratosphere and put him more in the mainstream light. And like I say, after that, it's just like he go bam, bam, bam as far as, hit movies. Of course, Wild Wild West is not a great choice, but it is what it is. He did it and everything. Of course, you get the whole song off the soundtrack with him, Drew Hill and Kumo D and everything, and all that type of stuff. But I mean, Will Smith, he had a string of very successful movies, and I feel like Independence Day is the movie that really put him in that category as far as, being an A-list action star. And I feel like there are some movie stars that kind of, I want to say, kind of bit off his model of being a action star, Tom Cruise, to a degree. But that is for another discussion. I won't go too much into that. Otherwise, this podcast will turn into the Will Smith versus Tom Cruise episode, which I actually could do and talk more about that, but I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to stay focused on talking about Independence Day. So let's talk about some of the key characters of this movie. So I already kind of mentioned a little bit about Will Smith. So let's talk about one Mr. Captain Stephen Hiller, who is this, he's an Air Force captain and everything. In a way, he's a Top Gun, if you will. And like I say, he's in a relationship with Vivica Fox character. And she has a young son. And we find out, of course, that she's a stripper, which kind of gets played up for laughs. Like, are you really gonna marry a stripper? But I mean, he was in love with him. Plus, we're talking about Vivica Fox in 1996. I mean, wouldn't want Vivica Fox, Vivica Fox like that, right? But at the same time, he gets to experience, the whole alien invasion up close and personal. As like I say, his whole entire squad gets wiped out, and he sheer miracle survives. And the fact that we're supposed to believe that just a punch to the face was supposed to kill this thing. Like, we really supposed to believe that? It's like, all right. But I mean, for the most part, we kind of believe it until, no, it ain't dead, and everything. And then it goes on a rampage until it finally gets murdered. But, I mean, he's dope in this movie. Will Smith is very good in this movie. Of course, what will become, as I like to refer to as Willisms, is here to a degree in the movie. And what I mean by Willisms is that, and if you watch Bad Boys, if you watch this movie, if you watch Men in Black, Will Smith, he tends to incorporate some of similar tropes of, comedic stuff that he is known for, and everything. It's kind of similar to like the same thing that Arnold Schwarzenegger would do, like with the whole "I'll be back" and stuff like that. That's where he kind of does some of that here as well, and everything. And it's nothing wrong with it. It's kind of good having type of signature type things. Now, the only problem I have is when you kind of start doing it in movies that don't necessarily call for it. But the fact that, I mean, this movie, it is supposed to be somewhat tongue-in-cheek at certain spots. Not entirely, but in certain spots. So it's fine here. You got Jeff Goldblum as David Levison, who is virtually the smartest person in the movie, and everything. And the fact that initially no one wants to believe that, now these aliens, they come here, they pretty much they about to do something diabolical, and I think we need to leave and get as far away from these spaceships as possible. And nobody really wants to listen to him until damn near the 0 hour or whatever. And I really enjoy once they do get Hiller and David together, because I felt like Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith had really good chemistry together. And it's like, it'd been cool if they would have did another movie together where it was just the two of them, because I think that would have been very interesting, like to see them play off each other, especially with how, around this time you had Will Smith playing off of Martin Lawrence in Bad Boys. You had him playing off of Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black, and everything. And we get like a good amount of time between Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum here. But I think it would have been cool if we got an entire movie with the two of them together, and everything. But as far as the David character goes, I mean, like I say, he's the smartest person thing. He has like this, mini rivalry with the president, because before he was the president, the whole thing was they got into a fight because him and his ex-wife at the time, they were together, but he assumed that she was having an affair with with Bill Pullman's character. So he punched him in the head, and it's like there's a whole thing between the two of them. But as the movie kind of progresses, we get to where they start to have mutual respect for each other, because at the end of the day, it's like we working together for a common goal, and we can put our differences aside, to basically save mankind, basically, and everything. Then, of course, we have Bill Pullman as President Whitmore, and it's something to see him play this role, because for a lot of people, this might be the first movie that they really know Bill Pullman from. But if you someone who watched movies like I did and everything, especially as a kid, you know him as Lone Star and Spaceballs. And it's kind of funny, like, if you saw him there and then you see him in, like, While You Were Sleeping, and I always forget the name of the movie that he did with Ben Stiller. I think is it Permanent Midnight? No, it's not Permanent Midnight. Hell, what's the name of that freaking movie? I can't think of it right now because I'm not even looking at my phone or anything, so I can't even. But that movie, I think it's Less Than Zero, I believe is what it's called. I believe. Like I say, movies like that, like that's what he did before this, and then here, him being the kind of cool, calm, very authoritative, but also fatherly figure here as the president and everything. This is what he kind of came known for, and everything. I think he does a good job here too, because he kind of has to carry like the burden of dealing with all the strategical stuff and dealing with, people under him that might not, have the best interests of everything, even though they see what's going on, but they want to kind of hide stuff until they can't hide stuff, like Area 51 and all that type of stuff later on. And then the whole thing with his wife, being injured. And then when they finally do get her to Area 51 base and everything, she dies. And it's like, well, there's some it's like, that's not cool. Like, it's like he survived all this just to get there, just to have basically a final goodbye with her family before she died. And it's like, damn, that kind of sucks. And everything. Then, of course, he leads the charge as far as, the final mission. Because everyone's like, oh, you're the president, you shouldn't be going. He's like, man, I was an Air Force pilot. Like, look, I got this. I can do this. And then he get up there. It's like, oh, shit. Everybody getting blowed up around him. And it's like, well, hopefully I survive, type of situation. And then, of course, the MVP, the madman of this movie, Randy Quaid as Russell, the unassuming hero of the damn thing. And the way it's played up, the fact that his character was supposedly abducted by aliens 10 years before the movie, and people, treat him, he's basically he's like the town drunk. Pretty much. He's not like he is. He is the town drunk, basically. And he flies a crop duster, and that's pretty much how he make his money. And he lived with his kids in a damn RV. And when the aliens show up, it's like, aha, y'all thought I was crazy, even though he is kind of crazy, because that infamous scene where he getting arrested, it's like, you gotta stop him and everything. He just yelling into the camera, and it's like, good Lord, this man is insane. But even despite all that, even though he got arrested, they actually let him go. And like he said, they got bigger fish to fry. It's like, it's a lot of crazies out there, a lot crazier than me. So me being on the streets is not the worst thing, basically. And everything. But he's good in this. He plays, his character is used for quite a bit of the comic relief, but when it truly matters, he steps up, and he is the hero in a sense, and everything. So like I say, those are like your big standouts, even though for me, I always enjoy what Judd Hirsch does in this movie as David's father. Because I always like that scene where he kind of crashes out on everybody on Air Force One. It's like, y'all wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for my David and everything. It's like, we were unprepared for this. Like, don't get me unprepared. Like, y'all knew then. Y'all knew back then, when y'all found that spaceship, back in Roswell and everything. So y'all knew then, but y'all did nothing. And now here we are, basically, and everything. I like I say, I enjoy what his character brings, because he kind of tells it how it is. Even when he's talking to David about the whole thing, it's like, it's been 3 years since your divorce and you still wearing your wedding ring. It's like, what's going on here? Like, and then even when he's talking to the wife on the plane, it's like, I think there's still love there. Like, basically, like, yeah, I know y'all still love each other. This man still walking around wearing his wedding ring. He ain't just wearing it for nothing. He feel that there's still a chance there. And like I said, he just feels like, he kind of feels like how a lot of older people probably are, and everything. They just tell it how it is. Don't matter, the scenario, situation. Like, I'm not going pussyfoot around with it. Or as my grandmother used to say, I'm going to give it to you straight, no chasing, basically, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, those are like the big standouts of the movie, for me at least. I would also include Vivica A. Fox. I think she does a very good job also, because like I said earlier, she gets put into this, very extreme situation. She has to survive the fact that, she survives the whole ordeal when the whole city gets wiped out, and then she becomes like a savior to a lot of the other people who survived, and she actually does help the first lady and everything like that. Like I say, she does a very good job in what she's given to do here. And it's kind of funny how she was even cast in this movie, because I think I talked about it when I did Set It Off, which, interesting enough, Set It Off and Independence Day came out in the same year. So she had two really big, like really good movies come out in the same year, right? But she actually got cast in Independence Day while she was doing Set It Off, in large part because of the connection to Jada Pinkett was Will Smith, and all that. It helped her get cast in the movie, which was great. I mean, she does a great job in the movie regardless, and I can't really think of anybody else who probably could have played the part that she plays in this movie. At that time, I can't really think of somebody else who would have kind of given the character that natural kind of feel. And the fact that her and Will Smith, they kind of have like similar type of comedic timing in a way with each other and stuff. So I like to say the chemistry with the two of them, the scenes that they have, it plays, and it works. So let's talk about some of the standout scenes in this movie. Of course, the White House explosion is one of the biggest ones, because like I say, oh my God, the White House getting blown up, or when New York is getting, destroyed, and the character that Harvey Firestein plays, and where he's there in the street, and it's like, oh my God, and you see this fireball coming towards him, and then there's the freaking fire truck, and clearly he gets killed on the street like everybody else does. Of course, the Welcome to Earth punch, which is, like I say, at the time is dope, but kind of looking at it now, it is kind of a little hokey, because it's like, that punch really did a number on his 80. Put him to sleep for some hours until he finally woke up when they were trying to operate on him, and everything. But that fighter, that fighter jet fight with the aliens, I mean, that's a standout, of course. The president's speech, like I mentioned earlier, where he's basically hyping up, everybody. We will not go quietly into the night and everything, the whole, and all that good stuff. I mean, you listen to that speech, I mean, it probably would get you hyped up to go run through a brick wall, probably. And then, of course, the whole final dogfight with the fighter jets, and then the whole thing with Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum characters as they on the mothership up in space, and them trying to download the virus into to bring their comms down, and to bring their shields down, I should say. So, like I say, you have all that kind of going on, and like I said, those are some of the biggest scenes in the movie. Another one that I'll probably mention too is when Air Force One is taking off and they barely get through it, and the flames is literally on the tail of the plane and all that. And it's like, what the heck? Like, this is insane. So like I said, whenever I watch Independence Day, I always think about how I think back to when I watched it initially back in 1996, and then like watching it now, and like, yeah, this movie still packs a punch. In good ways. It still packs it packs a mean punch, just like Captain Stephen Hillard gave to that freaking alien. I mean, some of the things about this movie that you can kind of take away from it. One of the biggest I would say is about teamwork. It is a group project, and everybody, unfortunately, is not working on the same page. Like freaking James Rebhorn. I always forget his character's name, but he's clearly not working on the same page as everybody else. Even when things is going to hell, he's like he just has to be the antagonist in a way of where it's like, there's no way that thing will fly. That thing is a wreck. It crash landed in the 50s. We don't even know if it can still fly or anything like that. He just so against everything until he finally gets fired, and then he's sitting there as just a regular civilian, and everything like that. So he's like working against everybody to a degree. I mean, you got Russell as the wild card. Like, yeah, he's a part of the group project, but he's off doing his own thing until he finally, actually contributes to the group project. But this movie, it definitely shows, like, you see what happens when you work together to accomplish something. Like, you actually can make great strides if you work together, and like how unlikely alliances form. Who would have thought that Air Force, captain, and this guy who's basically a freaking genius, who is working a mediocre job when you think about it, based off of his, level of intelligence. Because he didn't have to be working where he was working, which was a TV station. He was like a TV repairman, basically. And it's like, what are you doing here? That's like below. You are overqualified to be working in the job that he's working. But that's what he was doing. And everything. But the unlikely alliance between him and Will Smith character, like, who would have thought that would happen? Or the fact that the guy that that he thought was cheating with his wife, I should say, and everything, like, he became the president, and then they become alliances. Like, cause like that whole thing of how when the president says, well, why don't you just, let them know what, hopefully they think that you as smart as we all hope you are. And why don't you just tell them what you know and everything. It's the president's way of basically like, no, I respect that you smart and everything. And we all think that you smart. So let them, give, step up and kind of, give your expertise basically. And it's like, he's kind of giving David the confidence back that I think he lost when him and his wife got divorced, and everything. So, and the fact that, and then also too, Judge Hurst's character, he basically steps up to get people to get them to even, like, look, I know there's something out here that can help us, with this fight. Like, he becomes like an unofficial member of the president's staff in a way, because it's said in the movie that the vice president and the joint chiefs of staff basically got taken out, so everybody that's on Air Force One is pretty much left of like the president's cabinet to the basically. So Judge Hurst in a weird way became part of the president's cabinet, because I always like this scene when they come walking into Area 51. It's like, yeah, they all come. It's like, you got the president, you got you got Robert Loggia character, who I assume is is over defense and everything, and then you got I always forget what the ex-wife. I always forget what her position was. I know she was on his staff, but they never say fully what her actual position was. So you have her, you have David and his dad come walking in as these civilians, but it's like, well, this is the president and his staff walking in basically, and everything. Also too, Roland Emmerich, he has this. One thing about watching his movies, like I say, is very spectacle driven, like I mentioned earlier. And like I say, when you watch this, you watch The Day After Tomorrow, you watch 2012, they all have the same type of, kind of hyped up action spectacle, tones and everything. Because like in The Day After Tomorrow, when the world is going through the whole climate change and all this stuff, and how you have the temperature, it goes below 171 degrees and like instantly you freeze to death. It's like that is insanity. But the way it's played is like, that's a spectacle to see. Like when those helicopters crash, and then the dude, he opens the door. As soon as he opens the door, and like how he takes that breath, it is like he instantly freezes. Like that's insane to watch. Or when the ocean overflows and it floods all of New York, and everyone pretty much running for their lives to get inside the library and everything. Or the whole thing with the damn ship is basically cruising down 10th Avenue basically, and it's like, what the hell is this? And all that type of stuff. It's spectacle. 2012, I mean, that movie is filled with nothing but spectacle when the earthquakes and everything, the volcanoes and all that is erupting, and just everything is going to hell, and John Cusack trying to drive through the entire city in that damn limo, and he whipping his limo, through people's yards and all this stuff just to, save his family and everything. And we get a lot of that here in this movie. And I always think about too, like, I know I said it earlier, but how Independence Day, it also, not only did it bring back like the alien invasion type movies and everything, but also too, it helped kind of reignite the disaster movie genre also, like from the old movies from the 70s, like the airport movies, or those type of movies, Earthquake and the Poseidon Adventure, those type of movies. This movie kind of helped bring that back, and that's why you kind of started getting a string of disaster type movies. I mean, it makes you wonder, do we necessarily get Armageddon and Deep Impact that follows a few years later without Independence Day? Don't know. But those are disaster movies and everything. And like I say, the other movies that Roland Emmerich himself gets to direct that are very much disaster movies, do we necessarily get those if it wasn't for the success of Independence Day? Similar to like what I was saying about how Jaws and Jurassic Park at different times help bring back the summer blockbuster or and everything. Do we necessarily get Independence Day without Jurassic Park? But without Independence Day, do we get, like I say, the disaster movie genre coming back as well, and everything? And then, like I say, you get all of those movies that followed that had high risk, like your Armageddons, like your Deep Impacts. Trying to think of some others around this particular time that came out, because you get The Day After Tomorrow in 2004, and then you get 2012 in 2009 and everything. So like I say, those movies come after, but then you get a string of other movies that are like big disaster type movies that come along as well, and everything. And it just kind of, you get these big budgeted blockbuster disaster type movies that have, total world, stakes at hand and everything. And then, I mean, this movie, it has a long legacy. I mean, the fact that this movie is, next year, this movie turns 30 years old, which is crazy when you think about it, that this movie is 30 years. It's a 30-year-old movie, and everything. It feels like it just came out yesterday, right? But think about the long lasting legacy that the movie's had. Not only from, I mean, of course, you have the countless memes that came from the movie. Then, even though I said I was not going to mention Resurgence, but it did have a sequel. The sequel is not good. Why they thought it would be a good idea to make a sequel to the movie, especially when you don't get everything that made this movie great, is why Resurgence is not great. And even though you get a few people who were in the original do return, but it just doesn't have the same feel or impact that this movie had. But it's still, you did get a legacy sequel and everything like that. Maybe they should do another just to kind of wipe away what Resurgence was and everything. Because they can't, I mean, they can always do it to kind of retcon certain things if they really want to. But this movie's legacy has, it still is a very good legacy, and everything, and whatnot. So before I get up out of here, of course, I have a few more things to talk about regarding the movie. Does this movie still hold up? And I say yes, it does. Watching it for this episode, clearly, this movie still does hold up. Special effects is still really good, especially if you're watching it, on 4K and everything like that. The special effects are still very good for a 30-year-old movie that it didn't rely heavily on CGI. I mean, granted, you can tell when certain stuff is and when it's not. But at the same time, the practical stuff is very good. I mean, the look of the aliens are very good, especially the one that Hiller knocks out, and then when he gets into Area 51, the whole thing when it comes, when it wakes up basically, and it wreaks havoc on those doctors in their room and everything. I mean, that's a great sight, and everything. But yeah, I do feel like the movie still holds up. For anyone who watched the movie recently, and everything, definitely let me know. How do you feel? Do you still think it holds up, and everything like that? And does this movie still work in hindsight? Yes, I think it still does work. There's a lot of things about the movie that does work. Now, so this is what I was getting at earlier when I was saying that about a few things that kind of bother me as far as, and I feel like it doesn't work necessarily. And the two things that I'm referring to is the whole thing of why y'all playing like, using like the real world stuff in a sense, especially when the whole thing about Area 51 gets brought up. Now, I understand when the whole conversation on Air Force One, when, like I said, when Judd Hirsch's character, is going on about, you knew then, like, the thing, the spaceship you found in Roswell, Mexico. And the way David's like, come on, Dad, that wasn't a spaceship. It was like, and then it took for Mr. No Good to say, well, that's not entirely true. Because the president's like, sir, I can assure you there's no Area 51. If it was, I would have known about this. And it's like, that's not entirely true. So when they get there, it's like, well, why didn't you tell nobody? It's like plausible deniability, right? And it's like, yeah, there's certain things that even the president should not know about, for, reasons, and everything. And then the whole thing about Russell and the whole him being, abducted by aliens. They play that for a joke initially, which before you see the aliens, okay, yeah, you get the guys, cracking jokes on him about being abducted by aliens, this, that, and the third. But once we know that the aliens do exist, once we know and see that they pretty much wiped out everything, and when he brings up again about, him being abducted by aliens and he want to get some payback, and they just kind of looking at him like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's like people don't believe that he was actually abducted by aliens, and it's like, but we are in the midst of an alien invasion. So is there a possibility that this man was abducted by aliens? Is it possible? especially with the fact that you clearly see that aliens actually existed. And like I say, those two things always kind of bother me a little bit about how they kind of play like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, especially with the whole Area 51 thing. Now, the whole being abducted by aliens, that just kind of, that shouldn't have been played for jokes anymore once the alien ships showed up. That shouldn't have been played, but they do it a few times after that. The Roswell thing, it's like, plausible deniability, and it always makes you wonder, it's like, okay, are they kind of telling us within the movie, like, no, this might actually be true, but we're just gonna kind of nudge, wink, wink, that it's not true, type of thing. Could they reboot this again? Like I say, even though they did Resurgence and everything, but since we are somewhat in an era of legacy sequels and things of that nature, could they do another one that is not in relation to Resurgence and say, we're just gonna make another one that's more of that's more in line with what made the original work? Or is it too late to even do it? Or could they do it as a limited series? Because you have, you kind of do get things like that where they kind of do it as a limited series that it can be done as a limited series, and you kind of expand a little bit more on certain characters. Because, I mean, even though this is an ensemble, but some characters don't get a lot of shine or whatever. A lot is just there to be a support to the main character of said side story to a degree. Because we don't really get a lot, with Russell kids. I mean, we get certain scenes with them, but at a certain point, they are kind of like non-existent. And then even after that, it's only really Miguel, who's the oldest, that, that Robert Loggia even, says, your dad was a hero and everything. It's like, well, where's the sister and the younger brother? They just kind of mysteriously disappear and everything. And then I feel like there could have been even more with Vivica A. Fox character, as she's leading, the group of survivors to safety and everything. Like, there could have been a little bit more with them, but you understand why those kind of storylines kind of get cut a little short in a sense, because it's an ensemble and you got to kind of keep focus more so on the main characters. But I think it could actually work, like if they did Independence Day as like a limited series to kind of flesh out some of the side characters a little bit more. I wouldn't mind that. Not saying I necessarily want that, but if it did happen, I would be more open to a limited series more so to a reboot. And my last thing before, closing this out and everything is, what's your favorite one-liner or moment from the movie? Like I say, the whole welcome to Earth. What's another? Russell. What? I'm trying to remember what Russell says. Oh yeah, about the hello boys, I'm back. That type of thing. Of course, the president's speech. What Judge Hirsch, when he's sitting there talking, it's like, John Lennon, man, was all about, he was about love. Like, very good, man. He was, he shot in the back. Oh, it was very sad. And the wife looked like, what? Like, what? Like, what is he talking about? And everything. But my question to you guys, like, what's your favorite one-liner or moment from the movie? Of course, you can email me at jmovietalk@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on the socials, whether it's the movie page on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Also on Threads or Instagram at jmovietalk on Threads, or JMT Podcast over on Instagram and everything. So that is pretty much it for this episode. Independence Day, it is one of those movies that, for me, it does stand the test of time. It's one that you can always revisit, no matter what time of the year, really. It is a fun watch and everything. Especially if you like these type of movies, it's still very much a fun watch. Even if you don't like these particular type of movies, it's very much something for everybody. And like I said, it has some really cool characters, and you can see why Will Smith went on to have the career that he has, and everything. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Next week's episode, I will be going into talking about another Will Smith movie, and I'm talking about Men in Black. That will be next week's episode, another summer blockbuster, and talk more about how Will Smith became Mr. Summer Blockbuster and pairing him up with Tommy Lee Jones. How on paper you wouldn't necessarily think that would work, but it actually does work very well, and everything. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening. Of course, you can find all the Movie Talk episodes a part of the TV Zone Podcast Network. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, just type in TV Zone Podcast Network and you can find us like that. And you can find all the Movie Talk episodes as well as the other shows that are part of the network as well. Thank you guys for listening for this episode. And like I said, I will be back next week for episode 346, as I will be talking about Men in Black. Until next time, peace.